Welcome to Innovations in Education. I'm your host, David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly. And on this show, we bring guests every single episode who have made things work in public education. This show is about the innovators. This show is about the folks who are solving problems. This show is about making things work in education. Now, there's a lot of shows out there talking about what's wrong in the education systems, and those are great shows. There's some shows talking about what we're not doing well, and there's a lot to learn from those, but that's not this show. This show is going to be featuring educators who are making things work for young people and improving public education. I'm here today with my guest, Jillian Juman. Jillian, you are the Chief Executive Officer of Envision Education, a national leader in deeper learning and performance assessment. You've got over 20 years of experience as a teacher, a principal, and superintendent in New York City and Los Angeles, and you've built your career around designing schools where equity drives instruction and assessment. Under your leadership, Envision continues to expand its nationally recognized portfolio defense model, helping students demonstrate mastery through authentic performance and public defense of their learning. Jillian, you're also a Pahara Fellow and a leading voice in equity-centered educational leadership. Welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jillian, now that we have a little bit of a sense of your background, the first question that comes to mind is how you went from a dancing teacher to one of the most nationally recognized innovative CEOs in our country. What's the relationship between dancing and teaching and learning?
Oh, I love that. It's everything. Dancing is everything. I mean, I started out, the whole purpose of dance and arts is that you are refining yourself all the time. Right? You want to be in the dance class and you want to be noticed, right? When you walk out and a dance teacher doesn't tell you how to get better or notice what you're doing or saying the things around feedback or acknowledging your energy in a space, then you don't feel very successful, right? My thought was to do that. And so for me, that was naturally kind of what teaching is. It's naturally what teaching and learning is. It's an ongoing force of feedback. It's an ongoing conversation where kids are and adults are in a space of, let me get better, let me learn, and this will never end. This is a lifetime journey. And kids know that. And then they graduate and go to college and know that. And then at some point as adults, we either take that on as a lifelong journey or we close it out, but not dancers, not artists. We often are like, what's the feedback? What's the next thing? What are we going to do? So for me, it was a natural thing when I started teaching. And I did it because I was broke in New York City, right? I was like, oh my God, I gotta get money.
The dancing or the teaching?
Well, dancing does not make a lot of money between me and you. So it was teaching. I started teaching a little bit on the side to just rent, right? And then I started realizing, wait a minute, kids are quick learners. They get it. And more importantly, it was so transferable. Leading schools is about how are you going to grow and adapt to the changes around you, which is exactly what dance is. So it's about connecting to who's in front of you and growing. So for me, there's no difference other than the physicality of what you're doing and how you're demonstrating what performance is or what learning is. For me, it's just all symbiotic. It's all the same.
Let's stay here for a moment. You talked about this idea of being seen. You said, I want to be seen as a dancer. I want people to notice me. And as you know, I've been thinking a lot about AI, teaching and learning, the processes of teaching and learning, what constraints teachers collapse to drive learning. And one of the key things that comes up in my head time and time is that machines can give you feedback. Machines, it can refine and personalize levels, but they can't see you in a way another person can. So just sit with me with this notion of what does it mean to be seen as a dancer? What does it mean to be seen as a student? And how does that drive learning outcomes?
Yeah, we don't talk about this a lot around intuition and physicality and the power of just being in space and connection, emotional connection, mindsets between two people, right? If three people are angry in a room, everyone can feel it, and energy that's there. And so for me, dance teaches that very quickly, that, you can move and all of a sudden somebody will kind of move towards you. For me, it was always like that in the classroom, no matter what I was teaching and even leading in organizations, the space, the energy that's there can't be replaced by anything. It's about connection. It's about seeing each other for who we are completely and giving people a chance to redefine themselves in that very moment. just by being able to acknowledge who they are and what you see and the opportunity for their growth. And oftentimes we talk about this, the faster that you get folks what they need, whether that's feedback or being able to say, I acknowledge what I just saw. Let's actually think about this. It just moves in a place where we're both giving and taking in a way that's really powerful. I think AI can do that, but you're missing the intuitive knowing that we have with each other that actually gives a lot more feedback just from a glance or a body move.
I can imagine as a dance teacher, and you said this a little bit, I'm looking at my notes, if I left that class and she had no feedback for me, there was this notion of like that she didn't even see me. And, I sit with that because I feel like great coaches can identify the current state, can identify the next step, articulate the gap. And it feels so personal to a young person to be like, you really saw my elbow wasn't, you're right. You know what I mean? So I want to throw that back to you again in this notion of refinement, because I think sometimes in dance we can get to the obsessiveness of it, right? Like this is Black Swan, Natalie Portman, right? She turns into a swan.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. Yeah.
Takes it real seriously, right? There's a difference between like perfection and feedback towards a platonic ideal that you can always get a little bit better at. And before I let this go back to you, your conversation about that refinement makes me think a lot about Ron Berger when he talks about carpentry, when he talks about like putting great products out and refining it for the sake of just putting great things out. So going back to you, perfectionism versus getting better, being seen by a person that you care about and who cares about you, dancing and learning. Back to you, Jillian.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing, I'm not even saying sports, which, I'm not a big sport person, but I understand from a physicality place being a dancer and kind of even in the arts and then performance in that way. There's been an allowance to, Michael Jordan would never say, I'm going to be perfect on the court. He would say, actually, each time I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to raise my numbers. I'm competing against myself. Even if he's on the court with a bunch of people, it's a collaborative game. It's really more about kind of how he's growing. And you see our best athletes, you see best dancers, like, am I going to get out there and be able to get higher, right? Get to this dimension that I need. And that's the goal. And I think around academics, there is a notion that you have won something, that you have gotten to the top of, and it is a perfectionism. It's dripped in kind of white supremacy around, like, we're all trying to reach this perfect ideal. And the truth is that doesn't exist. The real truth is we're trying to get better each time. We're actually competing against ourselves. And so I do think that, even teaching, right? There was this thing like, I got to win. What are you winning?
I'm super like that.
Right. But what you winning, right? You have to get better each time. And so there does need to be a redefinition a little bit around what is winning. Is it growing? Is it kind of getting to a place of mastery, which by definition means that you're at a place where you're making impact. For your place where you can see and hear and talk about impact, and that there is a commonality in that practice. And so I think that's the obsession, and it's grounded in this like academic view of like smart or not smart, dumb, not dumb. And coming from I was a special education student, right? I struggled with reading. I had to learn for myself that it wasn't about what Judy's doing versus what I'm doing. It's actually around like, how am I getting better? Dance helped me with that because it's a very clear definition.
Before we go on to our next topic, I think a lot about what you said, because I feel like in education, I think a lot about child prodigies, Jillian. And I'm always like, I'm impressed. Like at 8 years old, you're like playing this amazing thing. But like, what are you at 20 years old? It's really cool that you got there at 8, but like, we're all going to be 20 one day. Yeah. So like, what's the relationship about being great at 8 and being great at 20? And does it really matter if I got there earlier, if we all get to that destination eventually? Right. I've been thinking a lot about this insofar as like what makes somebody in that space. And I think a little bit about with education, right? Because I've definitely had a conversation where somebody is like, my child is doing algebra in 8th grade. And somebody's like, my child is doing algebra in 6th grade. And the other one is like, my child is doing algebra in the womb. And I'm like, we're all got to learn algebra eventually, right? So like, does it matter if you're doing it in the womb, or does it matter that we understand how to model concepts through symbols and reason through symbols in order to predict things about the present?
That's right. It's a good conversation to have, and it is about our competition and who's smarter and who's better and all those things. But I was looking at my nephew who, he had the real gift to get a private tutor throughout the entire COVID experience. And not many of us had that opportunity to be tutored in that way. And when he went back to school, kids were at a lower pace than he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it had, as a family, we kind of had to step back and say, what were we accelerating his learning for? What were we trying to keep up with? Because really at this point, he's doing math and reading at a level that his peers are not. And so he's feeling a disconnect. And from a social place, what were we racing up against? What were we trying to be? And I think it's a good question around, what is our tolerance for difference? What is our tolerance for, I didn't read till much, much later. And then I accelerated very quickly in college, just like a slower developmental process. And now, who cares? Right? And who cares? Same thing. We obsess about certain colleges and we're like, but is that really the best education? Or like, my best education was actually in a public school here in California. So there needs to be a conversation a little bit about like, who are we performing for? Who's the race for? And is it something that we're actually just kind of perpetuating just from our fear of being behind and being caught for not being smart enough? You know what I mean?
I do. And I want to take this idea of performance because your portfolio defense model is recognized across the country. And I can't seem to separate your background as a dancer and your investment of portfolio's defense, where students, they get up and they talk and it's a public thing. Tell me what it is. Why does it attract so much attention? And why is that important for the future of education?
Yeah, you're right. I've been attracted to IB or portfolio defense. In my career, I'm attracted to things that allow kids to talk up and not just say what I know, but why I know it, how I love it in, and how will I apply it. We know this. We know that. I mean, we kind of wait for college sometimes for kids to like apply what they want to do with what they're interested in doing. And it's too late. And there's a reason why kids can become disconnected. Students can become disconnected around even the college idea, particularly right now where there's a lot of like, is it even useful to me? When they don't actually understand how their own interests, their own identity, their own way of being actually is part of the learning in itself and actually can enhance it. So where I'm doing this work needs to actually mean something to me and my family, my community. So we start very young. I mean, I've seen pre-K students in different languages doing different mother tongues talk about how the work and what they have learned has mattered to both themselves and their families and their community. And there's nothing more empowering than saying, I wasn't just taught something. I chose to learn it and I chose to earn it and I chose to apply it. And that's a powerful thing. And so we have kids that do that throughout the grade levels. And then they have a final defense where they are really defending their right and ability, because that is their right, to go to college and make impact and become future leaders in our community, no matter what it is. And so for me, it seems very, from my background, it's kind of a no-duh thing, right? I've had to defend my learning through dance and performance for my entire life. But it is, for some people around the country, just a gift, and it shouldn't be. And that was a shame.
So, all right, I'm going to take the role of some folks that I've heard. This seems a little loosey-goosey. I don't hear any tests. I don't hear any norm-referenced items. This feels like a way to lower the rigor of public education at a time where we're struggling to educate our students. How would you defend this model against those notions?
I think it has been not done well sometimes and can be loosey-goosey. I've seen not good projects, right? I did one in the 4th grade. The project was to build a mission with play. And I just gave it to my sister, who was 2 years younger, and she turned in my same project and got an A. We just kept recycling it in the family.
I tried to do that in 7th grade, and I got called out by my 5th grade students. They were like, no, we did that in 5th grade. And I was like, oh, guys.
I'm glad it got caught, but it also is a dumb project if you're able to do that. Right. If you're not having, right. So there is not good projects. There are not good defenses. We can dumb down anything. There's also not good tests. We're giving tests that are regurgitating information that kids can't remember. I can't remember most of my 10th grade year for that reason. Right. And so I think my message typically across the nation is whatever we give in front of kids, let's make sure that it's something that is deep and that is rich. I'm not against testing. I think it needs to be in addition to kids being able to demonstrate why that test mattered. I have seen beautiful tests where kids actually are learning as they're doing it. But if they don't apply it, if they don't go do something with it, then it becomes what I call loose knowledge, where it's kind of wrapped around, but it has no purpose. I push for the country, different states, as they're thinking about this. It doesn't have to be an and or. I'm ditching this and ditching this. It's more about what are the components that are going to make all of it something that kids are actually going to apply and then tell you from their own language why it matters. Telling them, but they could tell us why it matters and why the learning matters. And so I think we get into a little bit of it's either this or this kind of thing that actually a lot of private schools have not adopted. International curriculum does not support this either or thinking or just testing. And so we're a little bit old school in that way that actually is only giving some access to this different way of learning. I'm calling it different to some people in the country, but not everybody. That's the divide I want to break up. Actually, all kids benefit from having different kinds of ways to demonstrate why learning is powerful.
So this is an interesting point, something that I've seen as well. Oftentimes, the deepest learning is afforded to the most privileged kids. And some of this is because they're not behind. And so there's not pressure on the school system to hit certain scores, to show up in certain ways. And so they're in these deep conversations around the nature of the universe and how it's reflected in poetry or arts, right? And students in more impoverished backgrounds are in rote kind of recall mode, really focusing on staying out of trouble vis-a-vis not getting flagged on some state test for not doing well. And I'm hearing you say that there is a vision where we can use assessments to connect students to meaning, to choice, and to deeper learning that they actually find relevant to the problems that they find or that are important to them.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate belief to think that kids don't have value or cannot drive even sometimes more important questions. I mean, kids will sometimes, say things smarter than the curriculum is, right? And you're like, whoa, that's philosophically very interesting, right?
My son is watching philosophy on YouTube, Elijah. That's his thing on Saturdays. Yeah.
Look, sometimes we got to listen, right? They know what's going on. And even during the pandemic, some of our kiddos that we have seen in inner city communities who started businesses during COVID to survive, right? They're now running businesses. And so our kids are coming with a different level of intelligence for different kinds of kids. And so to believe that we have to close an academic gap or deficiency in something, which we all have, right? For me, it was reading when I was a kiddo. To say that we have to close that before they actually engage real learning or the kind of learning that college is preparing them for would be it's a closed mindset. It's a deficit mindset versus saying, you know what, we're going to close this gap for you, whatever that is, reading, Jillian. We're going to read hard and get you where you need to go. But in addition to, you're going to actually be talking about why that book, why that reading, why that new strategy that you're doing is actually helping you learn and what you're going to go do with that new knowledge. And so the belief that you have to do one before you do the other is actually what's keeping kiddos lower, not moving their progress, and not honoring the fact that there's other things that they're doing and thinking about that's going to perpetuate a faster kind of closing of the gap at the same time. In other words, our expectations are too low. They can do more.
I've definitely seen that in our schools where I think our principals are struggling to balance remediation with arts because they're like, all right, I got to get this student to a certain level by a certain time. They're already 3 levels behind. But motivation and purpose then suffers. And then students are like, I don't want to sit on a computer all day. It's a struggle. And it's something that I really appreciate your vision around, which is a both and solution and making sure our students have access to things that matter to them so that they can feel like the work that they're doing is meaningful and purposeful.
Yeah, when I was at the Urban Assembly, SLG.
Wait a second. Jillian, did you teach at the Urban Assembly School for Law and Justice?
I taught at SLJ when it was just a baby school, and my husband taught in the Urban Assembly. He was a dean at the Green Careers, and my brother taught at an Urban Assembly. So we are an Urban Assembly family. What? Hey, that's where innovation matters, right? But I remember I was teaching with a wonderful math teacher, and he was like, kids are really struggling with equations. And I said, as the dance teacher, I was like, let's tackle those equations through dance and your class. Could we come up with something that we actually are like driving? And so not everybody is going to want to find that sexy. I did. I thought that was fun. It was a good challenge for me. But I also think in general, it's like we can get smarter and we can close gaps. We're using different programs in our schools here in California, right? Like, let's do it. but also make sure that they're actually go doing something about it, the kiddos. They need to be able to go apply it and be able to go do what they're doing. So I like this and or that you're kind of highlighting. Let's get a little bit smarter around solving the problem and not just say that it's a problem.
I say this because when our students are in ninth grade and reading on like a second or third grade level, the motivation to go through phonics or decoding is low for a couple of reasons. One is it's boring, but also it's a huge identity threat. I am on ninth grade and I know this is not ninth grade stuff. And so this question of how do we uplift our students to create the motivation to apply this energy towards learning this thing so that they do the hard or difficult or even boring stuff. It's like hard because it's boring. And you talked about this before, and there are different things that they do well. The identity piece, I think, is understated, I guess is my point, is when students feel like they're failing in school, it's hard to convince them to deploy energy to do boring or hard things.
Right. And that's the power portfolios and defenses are important because kids need to know that they're good at this other thing and might be struggling on this other thing. And I think with academics, sometimes it's like you're either failing or you're not. And it's just not true. That's not the real works, right? I might be good at communication, but bad at this. I might be. And so the better we can get really clear about the skills, but also behaviors that we're celebrating. I remember I had a student named Mbali who was like, I'm a great reflector. I can reflect on, anything that I'm doing.
We could put them on our backs at night and just drive around New York City because it's such a great reflector.
Right. She's like ready, right? And she felt good about it and she felt proud. Also could say, my critical thinking skills need work.
Yeah.
And so if kids can actually say like, look, I saw a student doing circles the other day that was like, I'm embarrassed to share my feelings. And that's a really important thing to know. If we're able to get much more precise about what exactly it makes a whole human, kids can actually say, this is the thing I'm going to work on. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm just going to fix it because I'm really good at this other thing. And I've also seen like, let's work on phonics and do a little bit of theater where kids can actually like act out kind of what they're reading, what they're doing. So there is like a little bit of a push with this work around portfolio defenses, around portfolio work, around engaging projects that are rich and really deep. It allows kids to see the complexity of who they are, but then also apply it the way they want to do it. Its choice is powerful.
Choice is powerful.
From pre-K, you can see that with kids who are like, do what I want to do. That energy doesn't leave us. We just try to curb it in different ways. And there's no reason to curb it when we're teaching.
So let's talk about Envision. You've talked about your schools. How many schools makes up Envision?
We have 4 schools. We have in San Francisco, Hayward, and Oakland.
Okay.
And really, we were founded to stay small so that we're working throughout the nation.
Growth.
No, we didn't we put a kibosh to it. We had a school in different parts of the states and we were just like, it just doesn't work. The real truth is like, in order to impact the nation, we actually don't feel like we want to be the center. We want to make sure that we're driving the sense of change. We want urban assembly to be rocking and rolling. We want other systems to be rocking and rolling. And we're not needed other than to pilot and demonstrate what good practices do. And we want to be nimble. The larger you get, the less nimble. So I came to Envision because I was like, that's really interesting. That's putting the work in practice where we're actually not just talking about it, we're actually really about it. So it's made us a little bit more, we're faster. And we're able to implement together.
You are unique, Jillian, and Envision is unique because typically speaking, charters and district schools are like cats and dogs. They don't really get along, my enrollment, unions. But you are working with school districts across the country and not like hoarding a solution, but really trying to spread it. Is that right?
Yeah. I come out of district, you know that.
I do.
And we are agnostic. We're like, look, we're about building systems, working with state leaders, working with districts. And the only reason why we're charter here is because it made sense at the time 25 years ago to just get rocking and rolling. But we actually didn't care at the time either. We like the districts that are around us. So we are really about let's build it up, let's go. And we have staff that have worked both in charter and district kind of fluidly, knowing that it really doesn't matter if we are no longer needed in 30, 15 years because people are doing beautiful work with students across the nation with portfolios and defenses, we're not needed. And that was the foundation of charters in the beginning was like, we were here to disrupt system. We weren't here to take over a system. And so we are unique in the sense of we've stuck to that. And religiously, people reach out all the time. Will you build a school? And it's like, no, I'll support it though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's powerful, and it's kind of why I'm here. It's a little bit what I believe in. Districts matter.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about how Learning Partners works. So you are a network of 4 schools, and you are focused on solving problems around project-based learning and portfolio assessments. How might a district work with you? How do you work with a district? And what are some things that you teach and learn from them?
Yeah, we call it the flywheel. So we like to go out, learn, practice things with other districts, bring it back to our schools, sometimes pilot it to see if what it looks like, and then bring it back. So that's kind of our model. What we typically do is we go in and we're about learning what already is existing.
Mm.
What about your comprehensive? It was like, for example, urban assembly. What are all the things? Here are all the things that make up comprehensive assessment systems, making sure that you have MTSS, student belonging, and you're doing defenses. You have portfolio set. You have a grading system that allows for much deeper than A, B, C, D. And then we say, like, this is what's going well. This is how you're assessing in a beautiful way. And these are the areas that could strengthen it. And then we design a 1 to 3 year plan with districts on how to get where they need to go. And then we fill in where it needs to. So sometimes that's me coming in, working with particular leaders. It could be also us designing assessments that matter, or go into the curriculum and start, looking for what high quality performance assessments look like. So we just kind of partner in that way. What I like about that is we're not a teach and preach. We don't go in and say, this is the right way. This way, we know that our model in Hawaii looks very different than the one that looks in Kentucky.
I think what working within schools and scaling solution gives us is humility, especially operational humility. Folks like us have a sense of how to translate ideas into impact. And so when we talk about we're not preach and teach, if you're consulting, like, this is what I did or this is how you should do it, you're just saying it. But like, if you've worked in schools, you're like, I know the schedule. Yeah, we got to work on this. It's very operational. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is operational. And I know that as a leader, people came in and told me how to do my job as if they knew how to do my job. Like, you don't know how to do my job. I want you to bring in the research and the resources, the access, the information, and the time. That's what I want you to be able to do. But I know how to do my job. And so we do respect. I mean, there's not a leader I've met where I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. People know their communities, and it's about us strengthening what that looks like and allowing for a model to look different in every single site, which is very cool. That's how we learn.
Okay. All right. I want to move a little bit away and get into our lightning round here, Jillian.
Okay.
This is one of the most important parts of the episode. So I got 5 questions for you, and you are bi-coastal.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
You're right.
All right. So our lightning round today is going to be New York versus California.
And for what?
All right. Starting off, number 1, tacos. New York, California.
I'm in California.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Okay. You have any shade to throw to New York or uplifts for California in this?
I mean, and generally, I'm going to say just Mexican food, what's happening? I'm just going to leave it there to hang. What's happening there?
I receive it. Okay. Coming back to our number 2, New York versus California pizza.
I mean, New York.
New York.
I'd throw it back to California. What's with the pizza? What's going on?
We got to talk to people.
We have to talk. And the ranch dressing, that needs its own episode.
We need a whole conversation. All right. A little bit dicey here. Educational innovation, New York versus California.
New York. I love myself some California, and I think we have pockets of such beautiful innovation. But New York, nothing can move faster when you have clear vision and people on board. It's exciting, New York.
Well, I appreciate that, Jillian. Coming out of New York, it doesn't always feel like that. So having you say that reinvigorates my always forward feeling.
New York is honest, chef's kiss. You can move so fast.
All right. Moving from educational innovation. Number 4, New York versus California, weather.
I mean, California.
I mean, it's a big state, Jillian. I just want to name. It goes pretty long.
I feel like I've been north and south of New York, and it's a no.
All right. Our last lightning round question, New York versus California sports teams.
So I don't give a shit about any sports. So that's it. So I don't have a preference. Either one, both of them are just whatever. I care about both of them. How about that?
You care about both of them.
Love to both.
You know what? We'll receive it. We're not gonna talk about the Lakers. We're not talking about the Dodgers. We're not gonna talk about the Nets. We're not gonna talk about the Knicks.
Yes. I appreciate that we have sports.
Great
That's
answer.
all I'm going to commit to.
That's a great answer. All right. So we've got California for tacos, New York for pizza, New York for educational innovation, California for weather, and both for sports teams.
Yes. I'm like not hung up on that last one, but I'll just say yes.
People are, Jillian. They want to know your thoughts. They want to know.
Great. I do believe in that.
All right. So you go from New York to California, but you also work across the country. I want to try and figure this out. Why is that so unique? Why is it so hard for school districts to collaborate? Why is it so hard for innovation to move through educational ecosystems? What is it about Envision? What is it about Jillian that has been able to get folks to think about things together rather than separately and recreate problem sets frequently every year?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I mean, timing is interesting right now, right? And it goes in and out, whether we want to be more traditional or more open. And my push is to be both. And I think that allows for some doors to open to say, like, we're not excluding people. Right now, we're in a national situation where people are feeling excluded from something or something's happening, right? And for me, division's not the answer. It's more about like, how are we talking about equity to make sure that all kids are being seen and heard? And this is not a fight between testing and validity of testing and making sure kids are doing the bottom line. They need to do it all. And so that has been a nice introduction to folks to be able to say, like, that's what it is. I also think our interest to kind of promote, support, drive all school systems. We just want good schools and good leaders to feel supported has allowed for some continuity. And then we've been opportunists, right? You know, we have California that's looking at different ways of bringing in the grad profile. We have New York City looking at different opportunities that are there. Some states have been open for a while, Carolinas and, Kentucky, Hawaii's been. So we've also been there to say, how can we help? And how can we lift up what you're already doing? And that has allowed us to not just be a vendor. And I've done a lot of conversations of like, principals don't need to be slammed with a bunch of narratives. They don't need this person and this person. What we need is cohesion to say like this, and you saw this in our recent work, right? We're doing with CEI, we're doing it with big picture. That's attention to not compete, but actually give a one voice around what we all believe is true, which is kids need access to all kinds of forms of learning, not just some kids. I think that's what's opening our doors. That's what's allowing us to kind of, for now, it's been 17 years for ELP.
Wow.
And it's been our ability to be flexible and open and to be in a learner space. We come in and say, we'll learn from you.
Yeah. I do think running schools we talked about that before, that humility, it just shifts the perspective of, instead of do as I do, it's like, let's try and solve this problem together because we're having the same problems. I guess I feel like when you're running schools, you're humble about the problems that you can solve for other people because you have to wake up every day and try and solve your own problems. So it's like a kind of, maybe like we're doing this together, and maybe I have some insights into structures that have made this less difficult or release some constraints. But certainly, I'm not sitting here, I'm saying like we have all the solutions.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, a leader said to me the other day, like, this is a hot mess right now. And I'm like, I get it. Like, I also have a hot mess, right? Which, I've spoken with some folks who we also are partnering with who have no idea what it means when I say something feels like a hot mess. And you have to understand schools intimately to understand the depths of the impact of when somebody says that. So it is humbling. It is, there's other things that we're also able to help with. We're like, oh, we just had that enrollment discussion the other day. And that's a national crisis. And so let's have a conversation. So it is, I wouldn't change this model for anything, but it is also hard. It's a hard model to keep up with.
I would imagine because you are responsible for your school's outcomes and also for helping other people solve their problems. And so you got hats.
Yeah. And from a very vulnerable place, sometimes you have guilt, right? Like I come out of running schools. I come out of, my focus are direct families and kids here. And so, what matters most?
You got that working mom guilt, Jillian.
I do. Walking. I love that you said that. I'm going to write that down. I do. I have that all the time. If something happens and I'm on the road or our team's on the road, we're staffed. We're fine. We'll be okay. You have that like, oh, shoot, should it be me kind of thing? I'm like waiting for that to go with my seasonality. I like maybe next year I'll be less guilty, but it's not going away.
I hear that.
Yeah.
All right. So as we come to a close, I want to start to think about one of my favorite topics, which is going to be artificial intelligence. I am all about thinking about the application of artificial intelligence to solve particular constraints and collapse and release those constraints in public education. I want to get a sense from you at where you see AI and assessment intersecting. You talked a little bit before, right? Let's just be clean with some of these pieces. One of the reasons why we use our current assessment approach is because it's cheap. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's time efficient insofar as the point of assessment is an efficient use of time. Not necessarily because it's good or predicts things we want to predict, right? Because there are different ways of doing that. But I do think that AI will help us solve assessment in ways that are more meaningful, create more meaningful feedback to students. But you're on the show. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. We launched an international baccalaureate school, and that was a lot of hours. I paid staff over summer. Had to get, we had an IB coordinator. We had probably two by the end, right? They were working around the clock to just produce material resources, calibration tools,
Mhm.
tracking documents to make sure, like, if we're talking about curiosity in the 6th grade, what does curiosity look like in the 12th grade? Like all the things.
Grading, right? Yeah, yeah.
And it was brilliant and it was so fun. And it's not necessarily where we want to put all our hours right now. Maybe we would have calibrated faster on those things
Mhm.
and implemented it better if we could actually rely less on all the things. The 500 pages of documents you need to be able to get people where they go and track them, and focused more on how are we calibrating and how are we doing the implementation of. And that took a couple years. And so I am hopeful with AI that we don't have to worry about all those documents that go with that. And we can actually more focus on the practice itself. I think it's really powerful. I'm excited for it. I want to figure out how to leverage it and I'll create documents that people don't deeply understand. That's the other part where you have things get created in partnership with a computer system and you haven't embodied it or kind of understood it, which is where the practice needs to be focused on, right? But I'm hopeful.
Yeah, Jillian, that idea of embodiment of knowledge. I was just writing an article the other day on the difference between performance and learning, and AI being able to perform, but learning is performance and embodiment of knowledge, information, skills, etc. So now you can perform without learning, right? Like I can perform an essay through an AI tool without actually thinking, without actually producing struggle that instantiates that learning, right? And so I think a lot about this. Like in the context of education, our goal is to produce learning for students, right? And before we assumed performance was a reflection of that learning. Yeah. But now they're almost totally separate sometimes, not always.
Yeah.
So when you said like, oh, yeah, you should know what that document is, it's true. Do you have to spend 250 hours writing it to know it? Maybe not, right? Same question, I think, when we think about who writes curriculum versus who delivers curriculum. So I just want to throw that back to you and get your sense, performance, learning, instantiation of knowledge, and application of knowledge to solve problems.
Yeah. We focus a lot on execution of things, creating, executing, right? Particularly in education. That's been like, that's what we're doing. That's why we're grading so much. That's why, right? Like all the things versus backing up and saying, actually, if you grade 3 really good things, that's actually more powerful than grading everything, right? So there's these conversations like we're producing and we have to show evidence, right? And all of those things versus being like, if we have AI creating rubrics of understanding around curiosity, let's focus on curiosity, which is a huge component to success for people. Or how curious are you? If we have documents that are saying this is what it's going to look like, this is what it sounds like, this is how you evaluate it, then we have to do the harder work of saying, well, then how are we going to teach adults to be curious?
Mm.
And how are we going to practice that in class?
Yeah.
But I notice with adults is that we have stopped practicing. We stop rehearsal. We stop kind of giving each other coaching in that way, back to my feedback conversation.
Yeah. You said that like dancers always get to the next thing, but for learning, we're like, we got it. We did the thing.
Right. And it's like, what's next, right? And so the challenge for us is we're implementing this work and then we have AI as a friend, which I think is a good tool. Then we have to change the way that we're coaching. We have to change the way that we're looking at learning content. And we have to focus on our time in that way, which is not usually well practiced for folks, right? And so that will be the work, I think, over the next couple of years. How do we get ourselves to internalize material and then practice it versus create it and then hope that we go implement it well? It's different.
All right, I got one more analogy. The choreographer versus the dancer. What's the relationship between the choreographer and the dancer to creating versus performing high quality teaching and learning?
The choreographer is oftentimes kind of stepping back and saying, how do things weave and come together? And so for me, a choreographer is leaders. And that's how I see it, right? Like they are oftentimes stepping back and saying, here's the moves. Actually, let me back up and see how the dance comes together. As we're building systems, sometimes what happens is we're getting all of this information. You got to have this, you got to do this, right? And what we're not doing actually because of time and all kinds of things, pressure, learning, our own experience, we're not backing up and saying, how's the dance weaving together? And we've all seen those nightmares. I mean, you go to kids' rehearsals and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like you see that, right? And then we have the dancers that are actually thinking about how to implement it through the identity in which matters most to me.
Right.
And so what I think teachers have felt, and certainly I've experienced it here with our own group, is as we're developing curriculum, as we're trying to implement well, they're oftentimes wondering where their identity lives within that, which is the same thing that's happening for kids. You're giving me this stuff, right? You're asking me to dance to this thing, but I don't know where my identity lives. Best dancer is able to actually say, I'm going to take what's here and then I'm going to embed kind of what I know and believe and feel into that kind of thing. It's not two separate fighting things. It's one thing. And the choreographer will see that and say, dance in this direction. Let me help you. Kids need the same level in the classroom where you're saying, here's the material. What are you going to go do with it though? So that's kind of how I see a whole system as whether you're a choreographer, whether you're the audience that also is interactive, because when you're sitting in a room, right? It's not like a theater where you're just watching a movie. It's actually you're part of the experience in itself. How are we engaging with each other and communicating in this way? And that's the beauty of performance-based assessments. We're all working in tandem. We're not individual things. We're actually performing together as the larger dance.
Look, we have spent the last 45 minutes or so talking about the nature of dance, talking about how you came to performance-based assessments and feedback, talking about educational innovation, talking about the relationship of learners to relevance, talking a little bit about AI, and then finally coming back to what it means to choreograph and to dance as learners and as people.
That's right. And we talked about pizza.
We can never forget our lightning round, where New York pizza is the best pizza in the world. Yeah. At the end of the day, Jillian, I continue to be inspired by your work. I continue to be inspired by your willingness to create structures to innovate and scale solutions. We're all very proud of you over at the Urban Assembly. And next time we're over in California, you can take me out to tacos.
You'll need them after your experience in New York City. I will happily take you out to tacos.
Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our latest episode of Innovations in Education, where we bring education leaders who have made things work in the education sector. If you like this episode, please subscribe so that you can hear more great content around innovations in education. I've been your host, David Adams. Have a great day.